The Tanzan Railroad in Africa was the first major international project that China undertook more than 40 years ago. Beijing now sees railroads as a main pillar of the Belt and Road Initiative. Building rails allows Beijing to use its technology and export excess infrastructure capabilities. The China-Europe Railway Express is a 10-year-old international freight link that connects China and Europe along the Belt and Road. Over the past decade, the railway has expanded to 73 routes, reaching 160 European cities in 22 countries. The annual value of goods transported has increased 7 times, from $8 billion in 2016 to $56 billion in 2020. Hello everyone, welcome to Lei's Real Talk. I'm Lei. Rail transportation is neither the fastest nor the cheapest, but it's cheaper than air and faster than ocean freight. Therefore, the goods transported by the railway are usually high-value products that are not time-sensitive, such as computers, electronics, automobiles, machinery, and medical devices, to name a few. China Business News reported that one big problem for the Chinese EURASIA Railway was the number of empty containers on return trips. In some extreme cases, only one container was full, in a returning train pulling 41 containers. From the very beginning, the China-Europe Railway relied on government subsidies to compete with maritime cargo. After the Belt and Road Initiative was announced, more Chinese cities rushed to start their Eurasia trains, treating it as a major political achievement. This created competition among the cities, and local governments scrambled to grab market shares through heavy subsidies and preferential policies. Mainland Chinese media reported that some municipal governments subsidized as much as 1 billion renminbi a year, and some subsidized 1 million renminbi per trip. In 2018, China's Finance Ministry required the local governments to reduce the subsidies to no more than 50% of the total operating cost, and no more than 30% by 2020. It announced that subsidies to Eurasia rails will phase out by 2022. But in order to remain competitive in the freight business, some local governments continued to subsidize heavily until the pandemic hit. The COVID pandemic significantly eased the financial pressure on the Eurasia railways and saved the local governments. Before the pandemic, the price of a 40-foot container from China to Europe by air was $37,000. By rail, the cost was $5,000, and by sea, it was $2,000. The cost of sea freight has now exceeded $11,000. The Eurasia Railway offers the same price as sea shipping, but cuts the transportation time by 2/3. Yicai Media quoted the general manager of a Shanghai textile import-export company, saying that the rail transportation time from China to Europe now is only 2 weeks, and the cost for a 40-foot container is $11,000, while the sea freight price has risen to nearly $20,000. Official Chinese data shows that from January to August 2021, the China-Europe Railway had a 32% year-over-year growth, and more routes have been added in the past 2 years. On September 27, 2021, the global Yida line made its debut in Zhejiang Province's Yiwu, the city dubbed as the largest small commodity wholesale market in the world, heading for Madrid, Spain. The Shanghai line departed Shanghai for its maiden voyage to Hamburg, Germany. During the pandemic, the number of China's cities with a Eurasia train initiating from the city increased from 6 in 2019 to over 20 in 2021. However, the growth of the Eurasia Rail is not substantial enough to form an alternative to maritime transport. Sea and air still dominate international cargo transportation. According to data from China's Ministry of Transport, from January to August of 2021, the national SEAPORT container throughput was 160 million, while the total number of containers via the China-Europe Railway in the same period was less than 1 million. Rail freight is not even 1% of total sea freight. However, it accounts for 7% of the China-Europe trade, according to data provided by a former Vice Minister of Commerce, 未见过. Furthermore, the Eurasia railroads are met with challenges. Most countries in the world, such as China and Western Europe, use standard gauge tracks, but CIS countries or the Commonwealth of Independent States, such as Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Russia, use wide gauge tracks. As a result, the trains running from China to Europe have to change tracks twice. This creates major transportation bottlenecks and makes the freight more costly. In addition, uncertain geopolitical factors may affect railroad operations. During the refugee crisis between Belarus and Poland, Belarus threatened to close the freight corridor within its borders. The current rising tension between Russia and Ukraine is another risk. Belarus, Poland, and Russia are the countries that China's Eurasia trains must pass through in order to enter Europe. When maritime shipping returns to normal within a year or so, the freight cost will go down. This and the reduced exports due to declining domestic labor markets and foreign companies moving production out of China are other variables. Without government subsidies, the financial pressure on the railways will become a reality. However, Beijing has its agenda in building the rails. A post on Zhihu, the Chinese version of Quora, explains the strategic importance of the China-European liner. It's a backup mechanism to maritime transport, which guarantees China's strategic security. The railway allows us to directly avoid confronting the U.S. naval hegemony and grow our foreign trade on land. Once the sea routes are cut off, the China-Europe Railway will guarantee the delivery of our supplies. Recently, in the aftermath of Lithuania's strong support for Taiwan, Beijing is considering using the railway as punishment against Lithuania by suspending rail freight between the two countries. However, experts say that doing this would hurt China more because Lithuania is an important transit hub for China. Lithuania is a mandatory stop on the Kaliningrad line, a sea rail route that has become very popular. If the rail service to Lithuania is interrupted, freight cars will have to change tracks at the busy Polish-Belarusian border. In addition, Lithuania is located on the Baltic Sea coast and is an ideal transit point between China and Europe. Cargo by rail to Lithuania can be quickly distributed to Western and Northern Europe via the extensive maritime connections at the port of Klaipėda. I made an earlier video on China's high-speed rail. Please check it out if you haven't seen it. Meanwhile, since you've given me positive feedback on teaching you some relevant Chinese terms, let's learn some Chinese words for vehicles. You'll find that the Chinese names were given based on the energy source used for each vehicle at the time of invention. For example, locomotives burned coal, so the Chinese character for trains is 火车, vehicles of fire. Automobiles are called 汽车, meaning vehicles of gas. Trolleys are called 电车, vehicles of electricity. Bicycles don't need an energy source, but a driver. It's called 自行车, self-propelled vehicles. Airplanes are called 飞机. It's made up of two characters, flying and machine, so it's a flying machine. Make sense? You see, learning Chinese is quite easy. Let's review the words again. 火车, 汽车, 电车, 自行车, 飞机. That's all for today. I'll see you soon.